Welcome to Satsang. It's on. It's such a beautiful joy to be together with you all. Such a sacred moment, a sacred opportunity to together drop into the truth. And we begin as always with one of the questions that's come in from our family joining us from all over the world who can't be here physically but are joining us through the gift of technology and send in their questions in advance. So to honor them, we begin with one from them and then open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Can there be happiness without sadness, peace without war, pleasure without pain? Or do we need the sadness and the pain to recognize the happiness and the pleasure? Tracy, can you close that door? Thanks. In a lot of things, the opposites are part of the nature. So for example, there's night and there's day. There's winter and there's summer. There's birth and there's death. These are parts of nature. We can't escape that. Our entire solar system would have to function differently if we were going to have nights without days for longer than, the winter time at one of the poles, right? So we know, okay, certain places at the very, very, very far north, for some days in the winter time, they have 24 hours a day darkness. And then in the summer, they have 24 hours a day light. But it's time bound. It's a few days. It still varies with the seasons. So with nature, there's always going to be the full spectrum. There will be dry seasons, there will be wet seasons, hot seasons, cold seasons. But in terms of the seasons of our emotional life, as you can say, I don't think that there's any reason whatsoever why in order to have happiness we have to have sadness. Or in order to have peace we have to have war. It's sort of counterintuitive. Where there is war, there is no peace. Where there is peace, there is no war. So, no, I don't think you need sadness in order to have happiness, or war in order to have peace. We might appreciate peace more when we've just gotten out of a war. But that's our shortcoming. That's not something that's required. That's our shortcoming as people of being unable to appreciate things that are consistent and constant. I remember when I was growing up, I was in my early to mid-20s, and a very, very, very good friend of mine was telling me about the guy she had been dating for years. I had met him. He was wonderful. They were starting to talk about maybe getting married. They had both graduated from medical school. And she said to me, but she said, the problem with him is he just feels like a really warm blanket. And she said, it's not exciting. It's not, up and down. And she and I had both had an attachment to, a fondness for, you could even say an addiction to drama. That sense of like there has to be excitement, there has to be struggle, there has to be all of this drama. And so when she found herself in a relationship with a guy who just was this sweet, loving, beautiful, present, non-pathological, non-up and down in a drama sort of way guy, it took her a while to realize, thankfully she did, that actually he was the right person for her. And of course they've been married decades, very, very happily. But I think about that because it's human nature that we are really unable to appreciate deeply the peace when there isn't war, or the happiness when there isn't sadness and anger and drama. But that's a failing of our emotional health, you could say, or our psychological health. Because the more psychologically healthier we get, the less drama we need to create. We have this addiction to drama when we are not very emotionally grounded, when we need that drama to excite us, to pull us outside of ourselves. But when we're actually grounded and anchored and at peace with ourselves, then we no longer need to stir the pot to just make things get exciting, make us have a fight so that then we can make up, and then I can enjoy the making up part much more than I'm able to enjoy just being together without the fight. Right? This is really common in relationships, especially when we're not quite so psychologically mature. We create these fights just to stir the pot, so that then when we make up, then we can enjoy it again. You think, well, why not enjoy it without making the fight? But for a lot of us, that feels boring. So, no, you don't need sadness to be happy. You don't need war to have peace. But you do need a level of psychological maturity to be able to appreciate the peace when there isn't war. To be able to appreciate the joy and the happiness when there isn't sadness and anger and grief and drama. And that's a beautiful thing for us to be able to work on. Otherwise, we keep creating, whether it's an actual war or whether it's just a war in the four walls of our own home, unnecessarily. Ultimately, the goal is to live just in peace, just in joy and happiness. So that's the goal, not to need the other side. But of course, it happens. Life happens. Sadness arises. People we love get sick or die. Things happen in life. So sadness is natural. But it's a natural part of life, not something that's necessary for us to experience happiness. Good. Does anyone here have any questions? Do you have a question? You in the cute purple wool hat. No? Okay. Yes.
Can you? No. Hello. Could you please share a few words on the nature of jealousy?
So, jealousy, envy, slightly semantically different, but for now we'll call them that same really damaging experience. There's no good that comes out of it. And yet, it's something that so many of us, all of us, at one point or another in our lives are afflicted with. And it stems from a sense of not being enough. If I think that I am lacking in some way, then I'm going to constantly be looking around me and noticing those who seem to be lacking less than I do. So if I feel, for example, like I'm ugly, if I look in the mirror and I think, oh my God, you are so ugly. And when I talk to people, I feel like, oh God, they must be thinking how ugly she is. Well, then I'm going to tend to notice when somebody else is really beautiful. And instead of being able to appreciate their beauty as just beauty, it's actually going to pain me. I'm going to feel jealous of it. Because I feel like I am lacking. There is a hole inside of me that in my mind I have convinced myself has to do with what my physical appearance is. And so I'm going to feel that sense towards someone who is beautiful. That negative sense. Jealousy so frequently on a deep level goes together with hatred. It's very rare that we're jealous, but really love the person we're jealous of. In cases like that, it's more, we respect them, we would like to be like them. I could say, wow, God, I wish I could sing like you. But it's not a jealousy that eats away at you. When you've got that type of jealousy, it sadly goes hand in hand then with hatred toward, anger toward the person who has what you would like. And it stems from that sense of, I am lacking in some way. There is something in me that is not enough. I'm not successful enough. And so those who are successful, I hate them. I feel so jealous. And it eats me up inside. Or I feel I'm not smart enough. And all those people who know the answers, I hate them. It's not fair. I feel jealous. So jealousy it's not just a sense of I would like to have a skill, an ability, a particular car. But it's much, much deeper. It's a sense of that person having this has somehow taken it from me. I should have that. And the fact that this person has it has taken it from me. That's why we always say things like, it's not fair. Why should they get it and not me? And so jealousy is rooted, A, in a sense that I don't have enough, I'm not enough, I'm not full. It's also rooted in what we call the myth of scarcity. That there is a scarce amount, a very small limit of success, of beauty, of happiness, which is why someone else's success or happiness brings me such pain and such envy. Because A, I want it for myself. I feel like I need it. I'm not enough. That's what I need. But B, I feel angry because somehow them having it means there's less for me. It's less likely I will become successful because you've taken the success. It's less likely I'm going to find love because you're the one getting married. And so in order to overcome jealousy, envy, first of all, we need to really realize how very much enough we are. And how very diverse we are. Just like everything in nature. Can you imagine if one flower looked at another flower and said, that's not fair? If the rose bush looked over at the jasmine bush and said, that's not fair. Why is she so little and white? Or the jasmine looked over at the rose bush and said, that's not fair. Why is she so big and beautiful and red and velvety? They're able to understand, to whatever extent flowers understand, that I'm a rose, I'm a jasmine. I do the rose thing. She does the jasmine thing. I'm an apple tree, I give apples. She's an orange tree, she gives oranges. Without that sense of, why can't I be giving oranges? Because, again, to whatever extent they're able, as flowers or trees, there's an awareness that I am full. As an apple tree, I give apples. It's what I do. And for each of us to realize how full we are. We're not identical with each other. Each of us has our own very unique set of skills, of abilities, of inclinations, of opportunities, of a karmic package. But each of us, in our own experience, is full and whole and complete and divine. And to imagine anything else is to say that God is not perfect. That somehow God is playing favorites and gave her more than me. So it's to doubt God. It's to criticize God as though God was being unfair. The other piece that's critical is to realize that there is no shortage. There is no scarcity. There is abundant, ever expanding, abundant, infinitely abundant happiness, love, success. Everybody in the world could be married. And that's great. Right? It's not like one person becoming happy is pulling so much out of the happiness pot. Everyone in the world can be happy, beautiful. We're not going to run out of global happiness. Everyone can be successful, assuming that their definitions of success are not so narrow as being the CEO of a company. Not everyone can be the CEO. But the minute that we get out of those narrow ideas of what success is, then everyone's able to be successful. Most of us think, oh, the CEO, the president, they're the ones who are successful. And yet you walk into any good hospital and you look at all the different packages that they have for health checkups, right? You go in for an annual health checkup and they've got, 4, 5, 6 different types of packages based on kind of what's wrong with you or what type of person you are. And they vary in terms of what tests you get and how much they cost. But the biggest package, the one with the most tests, that costs the most amount of money, is called what? Anyone? The corporate package. Always. The corporate package, meaning those people who are the heads of these corporations are the ones who need the most expensive health checkup, because they are the ones the most stressed, the least likely to be in good health. So they need the most extensive and expensive health checkup. So there's no shortage of love, no shortage of happiness, no shortage of success, as long as we have a deeper understanding of success than just the guy who needs the corporate health package. And if we can really embrace both of those truths, I am full, I am whole, I am complete, my cup runneth over, and there is no shortage. There is infinitely abundant success, happiness, love. Then we can begin to break that habit of jealousy. And every time you feel it rising in your heart, take whatever it is that you're jealous of about that person and see if instead of being jealous, you can really appreciate it. Can you become sort of a well-wisher of, an admirer of that which you were jealous of? Wow, that person is so smart. I'm such an admirer. Instead of, oh God, I hate them, they're so much smarter than I am. When I was an undergraduate, our teachers, for some reason it was the policy at Stanford in those days, they would put exams, after you took exams, after they had been marked, they would put them in wooden boxes outside the lecture hall according to last name. So you would go and you would find the wooden box that had the letter of your last name, and then you would go through all of the exams until you found yours, and you'd see your mark and you'd take it. It was not a very confidential or private way of distributing exams, but in general, people there tend not to be too worried about what grades other people are getting. But I discovered at some point, kind of in the middle of my senior year, that there was someone in my class who had decided that she didn't care what grade she got in any exam. She just wanted to get higher than I got. Now, I didn't even know her. But I was the type of student who used to sit in the very front row of these huge lecture halls at 8 o'clock in the morning and ask questions. I was interested. I had questions. And I needed to sit in the front row because I knew if I didn't sit in the front row, I was going to fall asleep and not pay attention. So I made myself always sit in the front row so I would pay attention. And based on that, she must have decided that maybe I had a big ego, maybe I thought so much about myself, maybe whatever, maybe she thought, who knows. But based on that, without actually knowing each other, she had decided that her big aim was, whatever grade it was, she didn't care, as long as it was higher than I had gotten. That her big goal was just she was going to score higher than I did on an exam. And on the one hand, I was kind of flattered. I had never been much of a public figure before, and I thought, oh, that's really kind of interesting that out of hundreds of people, I was the one she had decided she wanted to get higher than. But on a deeper level, it actually made me really sad. Because I thought, my God, here I am just kind of going about my academic business, trying to keep myself awake at 8 a.m. classes by sitting in the front row, paying attention and asking questions that I had. And it had stirred somebody so much that unbeknownst to me, I had now become part of some rivalry. And I grew up an only child. I don't have sisters or brothers. So rivalry is very foreign to me. It's never been something that's been a part of my life in any way. And I remember being so saddened by that. But I mention it here because there's two ways that something like that could go. You could either see a situation like that and say, wow, that's amazing that she's got questions at 8 o'clock in the morning. Or you can have that feeling of jealousy. And as you notice that feeling arising, if you can just see whether you can become an admirer, a well-wisher, if not of the person in their entirety, just of that thing, whatever that thing is that you're jealous of. Can you just admire it? That person is so beautiful. Can you admire the beauty? We go to museums to see beautiful paintings. Well, there, right in front of you, is someone who is beautiful. Enjoy it. Admire them. Instead of feeling the jealousy. Someone is happy. Can you feel that? What we call sympathetic joy. It's actually a very deeply important part of a spiritual and meditative path. It's to be able to feel sympathetic joy. Can someone else's joy become your joy? And if you start that practice slowly, you'll find that you get free of jealousy. Just keep reminding yourself. Bring it into your practice of how full and whole and complete you are. That there's nothing you're lacking. And that'll help bring you out of those poisonous clutches of jealousy. Does anyone else have a question? Yes. And then here, one and then two.
Just to elaborate the questions that we have so far about the happiness, sadness and jealousy. These are all mind related. How, I'm not able to explain clearly. At the Atma or soul level, how can we overcome the mind in activities or mind things in this kind of things? Sorry, I'm not able to explain what I have.
No, I understand. How do we overcome these afflictions of the mind? Through the practice of yoga. And by yoga, I don't just mean the asanas. I mean the whole system of yoga. The sage Patanjali spoke about what we call the kleshas, the afflictions that cause suffering. Avidya, ignorance, asmita, our ego, rag and dvesh, our likes and dislikes, the pulls and the pushes, aversions. Jealousy falls in there, right? What I want more of, what I should have. And abhinivesh, fear of death. If you look at the afflictions of the mind, they're all going to fall into somewhere in one of those. Anger, jealousy, falls into avidya, ignorance. When I'm ignorant of who I am, so many problems happen. Anger and jealousy, just two of them. So many problems happen. So the way to free ourselves, this is why the sages and the saints for thousands of years have said, follow a path of yoga. And we've got so many different options, so many ways into the river of yoga. Whether you take what Bhagwan Krishna shared in the Bhagavad Gita, going in through devotion, bhakti, through wisdom, gyan, through service, action, karma. Going in through the 8 limbs of yoga given by the sage Patanjali. We don't have time to go into all of that here, but beginning, of course, with yam and niyam, how we live, and moving all the way up ultimately to samadhi. But it's that practice of yoga and of all the different aspects of yoga that free us of the mind. Because the mind has so many levels. The conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, the programmed mind. And in order to really work with them, we have to work in so many different ways. So we work with how we live in the world through yam and niyam. We work through utilizing our bodies to find balance, to find stillness, to find equanimity. We use our breath to get us into a deeper state. We then move. We move into that withdrawal of the senses, pratyahar, that single-pointed focus, dharan, the meditative awareness, dhyan, and ultimately into samadhi. Along the way, with our bhakti, our gyan, our karma, such that every minute of our lives, whatever we are doing, is rooted in yoga. And slowly, slowly, the mind absolutely comes into a state of stillness. Doesn't mean that you never have a negative thought. Doesn't mean that you never have a thought of anger or greed or lust or jealousy. But it means that you notice it very, very quickly. You're able to bring it back very quickly. And you're able to have compassion for yourself as the human who's having those thoughts. So there's no inner conflict, because when we have these afflictions of the mind, they're actually double-edged swords. On the one hand, we have the affliction itself. The anger arises, the jealousy arises. And then we've got the second affliction, which is the mind saying, you are such a bad person. Look at how angry you get. You're horrible, you're useless, you're not spiritual. Look at how jealous you are, you're pathetic. So we've got this double-edged sword. The natural afflictions, and then us berating ourselves for having the afflictions, for basically being human. And as we practice yoga, the afflictions themselves get less, but also our very sense of self gets much more gentle and loving and compassionate. And so that sense of conflict, even when there is a moment of avidya, I don't make it worse by then telling myself that in addition to being momentarily ignorant, I'm also worthless and horrible. I'm able to have compassion for it. Ah, yes. Ignorance. Okay. We pray to God. Lead us back into the light. Asatoma sadgamaya. Tamsoma jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma amritam gamaya. We pray, and then we come back. But you have to work it. It's not overnight. It's not a magic wand. It's a habit. It's a way of being. So start now. You're in the right place. Yes.
Everyone at one point in time in life, they plan a life sketch. Like, this is how I want my life to be, and this is how much hard work I want to put in for that. But one fine day, if you don't get it, or if you're not there, and and life has other plans. So how do you deal with those situations?
We deal with them first by realizing that those plans that we make are ideas. It's beautiful, we should have plans. Puja Swamiji always says, failing to plan is planning to fail. So we should make plans. But then, of course, we get reminded of that beautiful teaching that says, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. Right? So, make plans, by all means, absolutely. But we make them with the awareness that we really don't have the bigger picture in mind. We have no idea what the bigger picture is. We're creating in the dark. It's like imagine that you went to the Louvre Museum in Paris, okay? You stand in front of the Mona Lisa. But you stand in front of it only half an inch away. Like pretend they didn't have the glass and the guards and the whatnot. And that you literally were, like your nose was almost touching the painting, okay? And someone said to you, tell me about the Mona Lisa. You'd say, it's gray. Okay? Kind of a gray blob of paint. Not your fault. Problem is, you can't see the big picture. By the time you get 4, 5, 6 feet back, then you say, oh, not a blob of gray paint. Something much more beautiful. But it's not your fault to think it's that when you're standing with your nose up against it. You can't see. And when we make plans for our life, especially we're very young, how much can we see? This much. First of all, we certainly can't see our past lives and future lives, so we have no idea about the whole bigger tapestry. We can't see all of the different ways that the thread of our life is going to weave together with the threads of so many other lives. We have no idea about any of that. All we can see is that tiny little bit where we are now, and we are going to create a plan based on that in our minds. If all you can see is a gray blob and somebody says, okay, imagine what the Mona Lisa must look like from the gray blob, and you've never seen it, you're not going to come up with actually what it looks like. You're going to come up with something completely different. Could be anything. I mean, one little gray blob of paint could be anything. And in the same way, we can see this much. We know this much. And we use our minds to envision, okay, here's what the big thing is going to be. But then we get the distance of some years. And we get a piece of the bigger picture and we realize, okay, not what I had planned. But the goal, the key is not to be disheartened by that. I mean, let's imagine I had my nose right up at the Mona Lisa and somebody said, okay, imagine what it looks like. And I say, well, this gray blob looks like could be a dolphin. Dolphins are gray. I bet the Mona Lisa is a picture of a beautiful dolphin, and it's jumping out of the water in some island. Beautiful sunset is there, and a dolphin is jumping out. Okay? Sounds beautiful. Not at all what the actual Mona Lisa is. But when I finally see it, the goal is not to say, oh God, where's my dolphin? But to say, wow, what a piece of art that I couldn't even imagine. The best I could come up with, dolphin and a sunset. And look at what this amazing artist has created. So when life turns out differently than you had expected, once you get some years and some perspective, don't hold it to the vision that you had when you could only see a little bit. But rather, see how much appreciation you can have for the divine creator of what your life is now. And by the way, unlike a painting that is just done and then hung and framed and we can't change it, in your life you can keep adjusting, you can keep changing. You've got the full palette of all the colors in your hand. You don't like it this way? Okay. You want her orange? Fine. It's up to you. You want there to be a dolphin jumping over her head? Okay. No problem. If that's what you want, create it. So, the first piece is try to appreciate that which is rather than that which you envisioned. See the beautiful art in it. And then B, if there's something you'd like changed, pull out the beautiful palette that you have of all of your abilities, all of your resources, all of who you are, to bring about change in your life. And that's up to you. Beautiful. We'll take the rest of the questions tomorrow. But have a beautiful rest of your evening tonight. And a beautiful morning and day to our family joining from all over the world. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. So much love to you.